Ross Feingold is a political analyst and the former Asia chairman of Republicans Abroad, and he joins me now. Good to speak to you, Ross. Now, he had a significant experience in foreign affairs. So as well as being a single-term president, he was ambassador to the United Nations, U.S. envoy to China, director of the Central Intelligence, and also vice president. So, many positions there. What will his legacy be?
Well, the interesting thing about his foreign policy legacy is his personal involvement in so many monumental events in all of the positions that you just mentioned, starting from when he was the UN ambassador in the early 1970s. Looking at it just from the perspective of here in Asia, this is when the Vietnam War was going on, when China entered the United Nations, and then subsequently as director of the CIA at the height of the Cold War in the mid-1970s, and the first U.S. Unofficial representative to China before relations were subsequently established. And as vice president, he had such a good relationship with Ronald Reagan that he undertook many foreign trips and represented the United States in many different kinds of events throughout the world, not only representing the U.S. successfully, but also paving the way for his own success as a foreign policy president once he became president. And obviously he had to deal with the fall of the Berlin Wall, the end of the Cold War, and of course the Gulf War in 1991. But
you mentioned his presidency, and he only served as for one term as president. Why was that? I mean, he often talked about how people thought he was a bit out of touch. Tell us more.
Well, one of the outcomes of the end of the Cold War and the Gulf War was a desire for a more inward-looking presidency and to focus on the economy. He did confront an economic slowdown around 1991 and in early 1992, and a much younger President Clinton was able, or candidate Clinton at the time, was able to successfully capitalize on that and try and paint it as an opportunity for a generational shift to a president born after World War II. And George H.W. Bush not only was born before World War II, but he even fought in it. And President Clinton was able to successfully utilize a generational shift and a focus on domestic policy, on the domestic economy, as talking points during the 1992 election. And he beat George H.W. Bush to the surprise of many at the time. But just looking at George H.W. Bush's successful resume and coming out of the first Gulf War when the United States led a coalition to victory, it was quite a surprise at the time that voters did vote to shift their support to a younger president.
Mm-hmm. And Ross, I want to talk about the current U.S. Republican president. What were George H.W. Bush's thoughts about him?
Well, we know that Jeb Bush, one of George H.W. Bush's sons, and the younger former President George W. Bush, ran in the primary in 2016, and it was a heavily fought, contested primary. Donald Trump made it very clear, as did other people, to be fair to Donald Trump, that it was not the time to have another Bush in office. And it was a very effective talking point for Donald Trump. And the Bush family, at times, they were very upset with some of the word choices of Donald Trump. And Donald Trump was not at Barbara Bush's funeral earlier this year. But there's been a very gracious statement issued by Donald Trump and Melania Trump in the last few hours from the G20 meeting. And we'll see if the Trumps attend the funeral and what kind of further remarks Donald Trump will make about the passing of Bush.
Ross, thank you very much for speaking to TRT World. That was Ross Feingold, political analyst and former Asia chairman of Republicans Abroad.